My name is James, 65 years old, a retired civil engineer with calloused hands and a lifetime of blueprints behind me. I never expected my golden years would include an ultimatum from my daughter Amanda. After Margaret passed, when Amanda invited me to live with her family, it seemed like a blessing. I was lonely in that empty house, and the chance to be near my 10-year-old grandson Noah felt like a gift from above. But I quickly learned that in my daughter's home I wasn't family. I was help. If you're watching this video, I'd like to know what you would do if your own child gave you an ultimatum: serve their spouse or leave. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow my journey of rediscovering my dignity after facing a heartbreaking ultimatum from my own daughter. Margaret and I shared 42 beautiful years together. We met at a community picnic in 1977. I was 20, she was 18, with auburn hair that caught the sunlight like copper wire. I knew that day I would marry her, and 13 months later I did. Our home wasn't fancy, but we filled it with love. A modest 3-bedroom in a working-class neighborhood with a yard big enough for the swing set I built with my own hands. Margaret taught 2nd grade at the local elementary school, while I worked my way up from construction worker to civil engineer. We saved every penny we could. When Amanda came along in 1985, our lives changed forever. Margaret would hold her for hours singing softly, while I watched them both, wondering how I got so lucky. As a baby, Amanda had her mother's eyes and my determination. She took her first steps early, racing toward life with both arms outstretched. I can still picture Amanda at 8 years old sitting at our kitchen table, little legs swinging as she worked through math problems. "Daddy, can you check this?" she'd ask, and I'd put down whatever project I was tinkering with to help her. Those simple moments contain my happiest memories. During Amanda's teenage years, she set her sights on becoming a doctor. "I want to help people, Dad," she told me one evening. "Like you helped build that bridge downtown, but I want to build people back up." Her ambition made my chest swell with pride. Medical school wasn't cheap. I took on extra consulting jobs, working weekends and holidays. Margaret picked up summer school classes. We refinanced the house. Some nights I'd come home so tired I could barely climb the stairs, but seeing Amanda's acceptance letter to medical school made every extra hour worthwhile. Everything changed when Amanda met Scott during her residency. He came from money, old money his family had accumulated over generations. A plastic surgeon with the right connections, the right accent, the right everything. At their wedding, I felt out of place among his family, with their summer homes and European vacations. Margaret squeezed my hand under the table. "She still loves you," she whispered. "Don't forget that." After the wedding, our phone calls with Amanda became less frequent. She was busy establishing her practice, Scott was expanding his, and then Noah came along. We'd drive to visit them in their sprawling house in an exclusive neighborhood where I always felt like I might break something valuable. Then came the worst day of my life. Margaret and I were gardening when she suddenly dropped her trowel and clutched her head. "James," she said, and then collapsed. The paramedics said it was a massive stroke. She never regained consciousness. For 18 months after Margaret died, I rattled around our house like a marble in an empty jar. I'd wake up reaching for her only to touch cold sheets. I'd make coffee for 2 out of habit, then stare at her untouched mug until it went cold. The silence was deafening. When Amanda called and invited me to live with them, I was surprised but grateful. "You shouldn't be alone, Dad," she said. "We have plenty of room and Noah misses you. It would be good for all of us." The decision to sell our home wasn't easy. Each room held memories of Margaret. The living room where we'd dance to old records on Friday nights. The kitchen where she'd bake her famous apple pies. The back porch where we'd sit watching fireflies in comfortable silence. I sold most of our furniture, but kept a few treasures. Margaret's antique reading chair, the grandfather clock we bought on our 20th anniversary, the quilt her grandmother had made, and of course photographs. So many photographs. The day I handed the keys to the new owners, a young couple with a baby on the way, I sat in my car and wept. Not just for the loss of Margaret, but for the closing of a chapter. I had no idea what the next one would hold. Amanda and Scott's house was a showpiece in Oakwood Estates, where perfectly manicured lawns stretched before columned porches and luxury cars gleamed in circular driveways. Their home was Georgian style, with towering white columns and imposing black shutters surrounded by pristine landscaping that clearly cost more each month than my mortgage had. "Welcome to your new home, Dad," Amanda said, as Scott's sleek German sedan purred up the driveway. Noah burst from the back seat and ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Grandpa, you're really staying with us." His excitement was contagious, and for the first time since Margaret passed, I felt a surge of genuine happiness. "That's right, buddy." I ruffled his sandy brown hair, so like Amanda's had been at that age. "We're going to be roommates." Scott shook my hand firmly. "James, good to have you," he said with practiced warmth. "Amanda's set you up in the guest suite. It has its own bathroom and a nice view of the backyard." His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, but I chalked it up to the natural adjustment period we'd all need. The guest suite was lovely, with a queen-sized bed and windows that overlooked an elaborate stone patio and swimming pool. I unpacked my modest belongings, placing Margaret's photograph on the nightstand, where I could see her face first thing each morning. Those first days felt like a fresh start. I woke early out of habit, brewing coffee before anyone else was up. Amanda would rush through the kitchen in her scrubs, grabbing a travel mug and a quick hug before heading to the hospital. "Thanks, Dad. You're a lifesaver," she'd say, and I'd beam with simple pleasure at being useful. Noah took to having me around like a fish to water. After school, we'd work on homework together, before heading outside to build model airplanes, or work on the treehouse I'd started constructing in the massive oak tree that dominated one corner of the yard. "Dad was never good with tools," Noah confided one afternoon as I showed him how to sand a piece of wood. "He says that's what people like you are for." I let the comment slide, focusing instead on Noah's clumsy but earnest attempts to help. "Your hands will remember these skills long after your brain forgets them," I told him, repeating what my own father had once told me. At dinner, Scott would dominate conversations with stories about difficult surgeries or country club politics. He'd occasionally toss questions my way, but rarely seemed interested in the answers. Amanda watched him with an admiration that reminded me of how Margaret had once looked at me back when I was young and full of dreams. "James, you were in construction, right?" Scott asked one evening. "Civil engineering," I corrected gently. "I designed infrastructure mainly, but yes, I spent plenty of time on construction sites." "Perfect." Scott nodded. "The fence in the back needs some repair. Would you mind taking a look? The landscapers charge an arm and a leg." "Happy to help," I said, pleased to contribute. That weekend I fixed the fence, replaced some loose bricks on the garden wall, and cleaned out the gutters. It felt good to work with my hands again, to solve tangible problems. When I finished, Scott inspected my work with a critical eye before nodding. "Not bad. Saved us a few $100. As weeks passed, I settled into a routine. Mornings with coffee and the newspaper. Afternoons with Noah. Evenings helping with dinner, which the housekeeper prepared before leaving at 4. I started tending the flower beds too, planting Margaret's favorite daisies in a sunny corner. One evening after Noah went to bed, Amanda found me looking through an old photo album in my room. She sat beside me, tracing a finger over a picture of herself at about Noah's age, sitting on my shoulders at a county fair. "I remember that day," she said softly. "You let me eat 2 cotton candies, and I got sick on the Ferris wheel. Your mother was furious with me, I chuckled. Said I should have known better. She was right as usual. Amanda turned the page to our family vacation at the Grand Canyon. We were happy, weren't we, Dad? The happiest. I confirmed, studying my daughter's face. In that moment, she looked like my Amanda again, not the polished woman who sometimes seemed like a stranger. She touched a photo of Margaret. I miss her every day. Me too, sweetheart. But she'd be so proud of you. The successful doctor. The beautiful family. Amanda's phone buzzed and the spell was broken. She checked the screen and stood up. Scott needs me. Good night, Dad. She kissed my cheek and was gone, leaving me with ghosts from happier times. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard Scott and Amanda arguing in their bedroom down the hall. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear enough. When I saw Amanda the next morning, her smile seemed forced. But when I asked if everything was all right, she just nodded and rushed off to work. I wondered if perhaps I was overstaying my welcome. But then Noah would race home from school, eager to show me a good grade or continue our latest project, and I'd push the doubts away. For the first time since losing Margaret, I had a purpose again. I wasn't ready to give that up. James, you've been around, 3 weeks now? Scott asked one evening as I cleared the dinner dishes. His tone was casual, but something in his eyes put me on alert. About a month, I corrected mildly. A month, Scott repeated, swirling the expensive bourbon in his glass. Time flies. Say, since you're so handy, do you think you could look at the disposal in the kitchen? It's making that grinding noise again. Sure thing, I agreed. I can check it tomorrow morning. Great. Scott's smile didn't reach his eyes. Amanda and I appreciate having someone with your skills around. Saves us a fortune on repairmen. The comment stung slightly, reducing my presence to my usefulness, but I brushed it aside. After all, I was grateful for the roof over my head and the chance to be near my grandson. But the disposal was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Scott's small favors multiplied. The broken sprinkler system, the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, the wobbly deck railing. Each task was presented as a simple request, but the underlying expectation grew increasingly clear. One Saturday, Scott invited several colleagues over for a barbecue. I was in the backyard putting the finishing touches on Noah's treehouse when they arrived. And this is Amanda's father, James. Scott introduced me to a group of polished men in polo shirts. He's our resident handyman. Retired now, but still useful to have around. The men nodded politely, but I saw the dismissal in their eyes. I wasn't one of them. I was the help. Later, as I was retrieving more ice for the drinks, I overheard Scott in the kitchen. No, we don't pay him. He's living here for free, so it's a fair trade. Why pay for repairs when you've got a free handyman living in your guest room? The words hit me like a physical blow. Is that all I was to them, free labor? That evening I tried to talk to Amanda about it, catching her alone in the kitchen after Noah went to bed. Sweetheart, I appreciate you opening your home to me, but I'm a little concerned about some of Scott's expectations. Amanda's face immediately tightened. What do you mean Scott's been nothing but generous letting you stay here? I'm happy to help out around the house, of course, but sometimes I feel more like an employee than family. Dad, Amanda's voice took on an edge I rarely heard directed at me. We gave you a beautiful place to live after Mom died. We feed you, we include you in our lives. Is it really too much to ask that you contribute? I was taken aback by her defensiveness. That's not what I meant. Of course I want to contribute. I just thought... You thought what? That you'd retire and we'd wait on you hand and foot. Times are different now, Dad. Everyone has to pull their weight. The conversation left me feeling hollow. This wasn't my Amanda talking. These were Scott's words coming from my daughter's mouth. 2 days later, I accidentally broke the expensive riding lawnmower while attempting to trim the sprawling yard. A rock had become lodged in the blade, and the motor burned out before I could shut it down. Scott's reaction was volcanic. "Do you have any idea how much that machine cost?" he shouted, face flushed with anger. "More than your monthly Social Security check, I can guarantee that." "I'll pay for the repairs," I offered, mortified by the scene he was making in front of Noah, who watched wide-eyed from the patio. "With what money?" Scott scoffed. "Just stick to tasks you can't screw up. Is that too much to ask?" I noticed Mrs. Patterson next door pretending not to listen from her garden, and shame washed over me. I'd never been spoken to like this before, certainly not in front of others. That night, Noah slipped into my room after his parents went to bed. "Grandpa, are you okay?" he asked, his small face serious in the dim light. "I'm fine, buddy," I assured him, though my heart was heavy. Sometimes adults get upset over silly things. "Dad shouldn't talk to you like that," Noah said with surprising perception. "You're the nicest grandpa ever." I hugged him tight, his unconditional love a balm to my wounded pride. "Thanks, Noah. That means a lot to me." The following week, I overheard Scott talking to a neighbor in the front yard. "James, yeah, he's living with us now. Getting up there in years needs the help. We couldn't let him fend for himself, you know. Amanda's too kind-hearted for her own good sometimes." The neighbor made sympathetic noises while I stood frozen behind the open window, rage and hurt, battling for supremacy. Scott was portraying me as a charity case, a burden they'd nobly taken on, rather than a capable man who'd raised their comfortable lifestyle on his back. That night, I called my old friend Bill, one of the few connections I still maintained from my previous life. "They treat me like I'm incompetent," I confessed after catching him up on my living situation. "Like I'm lucky they let me stay there." "That's not right, James." Bill's voice was firm with indignation. "You worked your whole life, paid for that girl's education, supported her dreams. She owes you respect at minimum." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I don't want to leave Noah. He's the bright spot in all this." "You've got options," Bill insisted. "You don't have to accept being treated like a servant in your own family." But as the call ended, I wondered if I truly did have options. At 65, with most of my savings gone to Amanda's education and Margaret's medical bills, my choices felt limited. The thought of starting over alone was terrifying. So I swallowed my pride and carried on fixing what needed fixing, helping where I could, and treasuring my moments with Noah. But each day, the weight of disrespect grew heavier on my shoulders, and Margaret's voice grew louder in my memory. "Never let anyone diminish you, James, not even family." "James, I've been thinking," Scott announced one morning over breakfast. Amanda was already at the hospital, and Noah was finishing his cereal before school. "We're paying Mrs. Rodriguez $200 a week to clean this place, and frankly, you've got plenty of free time. There's no reason we should be wasting money when you could handle the housework." I looked up from my coffee, certain I'd misheard. "You want me to take over from the housekeeper?" "It makes financial sense," Scott continued, not meeting my eyes. "You're living here rent-free. Food, utilities, everything provided. The least you could do is help us cut unnecessary expenses." Noah looked between us, spoon frozen halfway to his mouth. I forced a calm I didn't feel for his sake. "I'm happy to help more around the house, Scott, but I'm not sure I can manage everything Mrs. Rodriguez does. She's here 8 hours a day, 3 days a week." Scott waved a dismissive hand. "You were in the military, right? You know how to clean. And it's not like you have a busy schedule." "I was never in the military," I said quietly. "I was a civil engineer." Scott checked his watch impatiently. "Whatever. The point is, we're letting Mrs. Rodriguez go next week. I'm sure you'll figure it out. He stood straightening his tie. Noah, get your backpack. I'll drop you at school on my way to the clinic. After they left, I sat in the silent kitchen, stunned. In one brief conversation, I'd been demoted from family member to unpaid housekeeper. The disrespect was no longer subtle. It was blatant, unapologetic. That afternoon, I spoke with Mrs. Rodriguez when she arrived to clean. I wanted to apologize, I told her. Scott has decided that I should take over your duties. The kind-faced woman shook her head sadly. This is not your fault, Mr. James. But be careful. I have worked for many families like this. They will take and take until there is nothing left to give. Her warning proved prophetic. Within days, my entire routine revolved around maintaining the household. I woke at 5 each morning to start laundry and prepare breakfast. After dropping Noah at school, I'd return to clean bathrooms, vacuum dust, and tackle whatever repair project Scott had added to my growing list. By the time I picked Noah up from school, my back ached, and my hands were raw from cleaning products. I'd force a smile for my grandson, but the joy I once felt in his presence was increasingly overshadowed by exhaustion. Why are you doing all the cleaning now, Grandpa? Noah asked one afternoon, as I scrubbed a stubborn stain from the kitchen floor. Just helping out? I explained, unwilling to burden him with the truth. Dad says it saves money, Noah said thoughtfully. But Mom seems sad about it. I heard her tell Dad it wasn't right. A small spark of hope flared in my chest. Perhaps Amanda wasn't fully on board with Scott's treatment of me, but if she had objections, she never voiced them to me directly. My health began to suffer under the new arrangement. The arthritis in my hands flared painfully after days of scrubbing and washing. An old back injury from my construction days returned with a vengeance. One evening, after carrying loads of laundry up and down the stairs all day, I could barely straighten up. You look terrible, Dad, Amanda remarked when she came home to find me moving gingerly around the kitchen as I prepared dinner. Are you taking your medications? Just overdid it a bit today, I assured her, not wanting to complain. She frowned, looking momentarily concerned, then her pager beeped. I need to make a call, she said, already moving away. We have tickets for the symphony tonight. There's a casserole in the fridge for you and Noah. The distance between us grew wider each day. The Amanda who once called me for advice on everything from car troubles to relationship problems now looked through me as if I were part of the furniture. On the rare occasions when we were alone together, she seemed uncomfortable, guilty even, but never enough to intervene in Scott's escalating demands. One particularly difficult day, Noah came home dejected. What's wrong, buddy? I asked, setting aside the silver I'd been polishing. It's Parents and Special Persons Day at school on Friday, he explained. I wanted you to come, but Dad says you can't because the pool needs cleaning and the gardeners are coming for the spring planting. The dismissal hurt more than any physical pain. Did you ask your dad if maybe I could go with you and do those chores another day? Noah nodded miserably. He said maintaining the property is your responsibility now, and I shouldn't distract you with school stuff. I knelt down despite the protest from my knees. I'm so sorry, Noah. I would love to be there with you. It's okay, he said with resignation, too mature for his 10 years. Dad says you're getting too old for those kinds of things anyway. That night, unable to sleep, I walked quietly downstairs for a glass of water. Voices drifted from Scott's home office where light spilled from beneath the door. He's becoming a liability, Amanda. Scott was saying, his voice low but clear. Did you see him struggling with the grocery bags today? He's going to hurt himself, and then we'll really be stuck with a useless burden. I froze, glass halfway to the sink, straining to hear Amanda's response. What do you expect me to do? He's my father. He has nowhere else to go. Her voice sounded tired, defeated. That's not our problem, Scott insisted. We've done our duty, taken him in after your mother died. But it's been 6 months. He needs to figure out his own situation. He spent everything putting me through medical school, Amanda said weakly. He and Mom remortgaged their house twice. That was their choice. Scott's tone was dismissive. Everyone makes sacrifices for their kids. Doesn't mean the kids owe them a lifetime of support in return. There was a long silence, and for a moment I thought perhaps Amanda would defend me, stand up to her husband. Remember who had stood by her, sacrificed for her, loved her unconditionally. Instead, she sighed. You're right. I'll talk to him. See if he has any friends he could stay with for a while. My hands trembled so badly, I had to set the glass down before I dropped it. The betrayal was absolute. My own daughter, the child I'd devoted my life to, saw me as nothing more than a burden to be passed along. I crept back upstairs, each step an effort as the weight of rejection pressed down on me. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Margaret's photograph. You were right to worry about her, I whispered to my wife's smiling image. He changed her, or maybe she changed herself to please him. Either way, she's not our Amanda anymore. The only light in this darkening situation was Noah. Despite his parents' influence, he remained compassionate and thoughtful. He'd leave little notes in my room, thanking me for fixing his bicycle or helping with his science project. He'd offer to help me with chores, his small hands alongside mine, folding laundry or drying dishes. I wish you and Grandma had been my parents, he confided one rainy afternoon as we played chess in my room. You're nicer than Dad. Your father works hard, I said diplomatically, unwilling to come between parent and child despite everything. Sometimes that makes people forget what really matters. What really matters? Noah asked, moving his knight with careful deliberation. I thought about Margaret, about our modest home filled with laughter, about family dinners where everyone's voice was valued. Love, I told him. Respect, kindness, the way you treat people, especially family. That's what builds a life worth living. Noah nodded solemnly. I think so too. That night I dreamed of Margaret. We were young again, dancing in our kitchen, while rain pattered against the windows. Remember who you are, James. Dream, Margaret whispered. Remember your worth. I woke with tears on my cheeks, but determination in my heart. Something had to change. I couldn't continue living as a servant in my daughter's home, watching my grandson learn that this was an acceptable way to treat family. The question was, what options did I truly have? The confrontation I'd been dreading finally arrived on a Tuesday morning. I'd been battling a nasty cold for 3 days, coughing through sleepless nights, and moving through my chores with the sluggish misery of fever. That particular morning, I'd overslept for the first time since moving in my body, finally demanding the rest I'd been denying it. Scott found me in the kitchen at 8:30, still in my robe, making a belated breakfast. The bathrooms aren't cleaned, the breakfast dishes are still here, and Noah's lunch isn't packed. He listed each word clipped with disapproval. What exactly have you been doing all morning? I suppressed a cough. I'm sorry, Scott. I'm feeling under the weather today. I'll get to everything as soon as possible. He looked at me as if I'd suggested burning the house down. Being under the weather doesn't fly in this household. Amanda and I don't get sick days from our responsibilities. Why should you? Because he's human, Dad, came Noah's voice from the doorway. He stood there in his school uniform, backpack over his shoulder, eyes defiant. Grandpa's sick. He needs rest. Scott's expression hardened. Go wait in the car, Noah. This doesn't concern you. But Dad, now Noah, my grandson gave me an apologetic look before slinking away. When the front door closed behind him, Scott turned back to me. His facade of civility completely dropped. You've become completely useless around here. The lawn is patchy, the gutters are still clogged, and now you can't even handle the basic housework. What exactly are we keeping you around for? The words hit like physical blows, but I'd endured enough. Despite my illness, I drew myself up to my full height. I'm not your employee, Scott. I'm family. Or at least I thought I was. Family pulls their weight, he snapped. Family contributes. You're just taking up space and resources we could be using for something worthwhile. Before I could respond, the back door opened, and Amanda walked in still in scrubs from her night shift. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. What's going on? I could hear you from the driveway. Your father has decided he's too important to fulfill his obligations around here, Scott said, gesturing dismissively toward me. Found him lounging around in his bathrobe while the house falls apart. Amanda looked between us, conflict evident on her face. Dad, are you okay? You don't look well. I've caught a cold, I explained, voice raspy. I was going to take care of everything, just running a little behind schedule. A cold, Scott scoffed. When I had pneumonia last year, I still performed 3 surgeries. A cold is an inconvenience, not an excuse. Amanda put a hand on her husband's arm. Scott, please. Let me handle this. She turned to me, her expression a mixture of concern and resignation. Dad, can we talk privately? We moved to my room where Amanda closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment she just looked at me and I could see echoes of the little girl who'd once adored me. This isn't working out, she finally said, the words precise as a surgeon's cut. Scott and I have discussed it, and we think it would be best if you found other living arrangements. And despite overhearing their conversation days earlier, the formal delivery of my eviction still stung. I see, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. And when did you decide I was no longer welcome in your home? It's not that you're not welcome, she hedged, not meeting my eyes. It's just that our expectations and your capabilities don't seem to align anymore. My capabilities, I repeated. Amanda, your husband has me working like a full-time housekeeper and groundskeeper. I'm 65 years old, with arthritis and an old back injury. I'm not physically able to maintain an estate this size, nor should I be expected to. We've provided you with a beautiful place to live, Dad, she countered, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. All we asked in return was some help around the house. Some help? I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. Amanda, I wake up at 5 every morning. I cook, I clean, I do laundry, I maintain the yard, I fix whatever breaks. I missed Noah's school event because Scott decided the pool was more important. This isn't some help. This is exploitation. Amanda flinched at the last word but quickly recovered. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? We took you in when you had nowhere else to go. I had a home, I reminded her quietly. I sold it because you invited me to be part of your family, not your staff. She stood abruptly, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from her scrubs. The situation isn't working for anyone. I'm sorry. Her voice hardened, becoming more like Scott's with each word. You have a choice, Dad. Either accept your role in this household or find somewhere else to live. In that moment, looking at my daughter's closed expression, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. This was not my little girl anymore. This was not the child Margaret and I had raised to be kind and grateful. This was someone shaped by ambition and materialism, someone who'd forgotten the foundation upon which her success was built. I understand, I said calmly. I'll be gone by tomorrow. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. Perhaps she'd expected begging bargaining. Where will you go? She asked, and I detected a note of genuine concern beneath the challenge. I'll figure it out, I replied, channeling Margaret's quiet dignity. I always have. Amanda hesitated by the door. What about Noah? He'll be upset. You can explain to your son why his grandfather isn't welcome in your home anymore, I said. I'm sure you'll find a way to make it sound reasonable. She left without another word, closing the door softly behind her. I sat on the bed, coughing into my handkerchief, feeling simultaneously hollow and strangely free. That night, I packed my belongings with methodical care. The clothes I'd brought, the few books, Margaret's photograph in its silver frame, the small wooden box containing her wedding ring and a lock of her hair. My tools, which had proven more valuable in this house than my wisdom or affection. As I was folding my last sweater, there was a soft knock at the door. Noah slipped in, pajama-clad and solemn. Are you really leaving, Grandpa? He asked, his voice small. I sat on the bed and patted the space beside me. Yes, buddy, I am. Sometimes adults have disagreements that can't be fixed. Is it because of me, because I told Dad you were sick? His lower lip trembled. Absolutely not, I assured him, pulling him close. None of this is your fault. You are the best thing in my life, and that won't change just because I'm living somewhere else. Where will you go? He asked, echoing his mother's question, but with genuine concern rather than challenge. I've got some options, I lied gently. I'll be fine, don't you worry. Will I still see you? As often as possible, I promised, though uncertainty gnawed at me. Would Scott and Amanda allow it? Or would they phase me out of Noah's life entirely? From my dresser, I retrieved the old compass that had belonged to my father. The brass was tarnished, but it still found true north unerringly. I want you to have this, Tom, I told Noah, pressing it into his small hand. My father gave it to me when I was about your age. He said that no matter how lost I might feel, this would help me find my way. But you need it, Noah protested. If you're leaving, you might get lost. I smiled through the lump in my throat. Some things you carry in your heart, Noah. I know which direction is true with or without a compass. Now it's your turn to learn. He threw his arms around my neck, holding tight. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, buddy. More than you can possibly know. After Noah returned to his room, I wrote a brief note to Amanda. Amanda, I raised you to respect yourself and others. Somewhere along the way, you've forgotten both lessons. I hope one day you'll remember who you really are. Despite everything, I love you and always will. Dad. I placed it on the dresser where she would find it after I was gone. Then I took a sleeping pill, one of the few luxuries I allowed myself, and drifted into a mercifully dreamless sleep. Morning came too quickly. I rose early out of habit, dressed in my best slacks and shirt, and carried my 2 suitcases downstairs. Scott and Amanda were in the kitchen, both looking surprised to see me ready to depart. You're really leaving? Amanda asked, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. That was the ultimatum, wasn't it? I replied calmly. Serve or leave. I've made my choice. Scott cleared his throat awkwardly. Where exactly are you going? That's no longer your concern. I set my suitcases by the front door and returned to face them one last time. I want to thank you for the past 6 months. Whatever else happened, I'm grateful for the time with Noah. Amanda's expression flickered with something like guilt. Dad, maybe we should discuss this further. I'm sure we can work something out. It was too late for negotiation. Something fundamental had broken between us, something that couldn't be repaired with compromise or concession. "You've forgotten what I taught you about respect, Amanda," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I will never stop loving you, but I won't sacrifice my dignity, not even for that love." I picked up my suitcases and walked to the door. Noah was waiting there, school backpack in hand, eyes red-rimmed. "Grandpa," he whispered, rushing to hug me one last time. "Be good, buddy," I murmured into his hair. "Remember what matters." And then I was outside the heavy door, closing behind me with quiet finality. The morning air felt different somehow, fresher. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for months seemed lighter. As I walked down the manicured driveway toward an uncertain future, I smiled. Not from happiness, but from the profound relief of choosing self-respect over servitude. The first few hours of freedom were the hardest. I sat in a coffee shop near Amanda's neighborhood, my suitcases stacked beside me, calling every affordable hotel in the area. Most were booked, and those with vacancies were far beyond my limited budget. Panic began to creep in around the edges of my resolve. "More coffee, sir." The young barista's kindness nearly undid me. "Please," I nodded, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. "And could you recommend an inexpensive place to stay around here just temporarily?" She hesitated, studying my suitcases. "There's the Parkview Motel about 15 minutes from here. It's not fancy, but it's clean and the owner is a good guy." The Parkview turned out to be exactly as described. A single-story motel with peeling paint but immaculate rooms. The owner, a Vietnamese man named Tran, offered me a weekly rate that would stretch my savings a bit longer. "First time in the area?" he asked as he handed me the room key. "No," I admitted. "Just the first time I've needed a motel." Something in my expression must have communicated my situation, because he nodded with understanding. Sometimes starting over is the bravest thing we can do. My room was small but sufficient. A double bed with a firm mattress, a dresser with a TV on top, a bathroom with reliable hot water. I unpacked Margaret's photograph, first setting it on the nightstand, where I could see her face from the bed. "Well, Maggie," I said to her smiling image, "this isn't quite what we planned for my retirement, is it?" That first night was excruciating. The silence was different from the quiet of Amanda's house. There I'd been alone, surrounded by people. Here I was simply alone. I kept the TV on just to hear human voices falling asleep to the murmur of a documentary about deep-sea creatures. The next morning I took stock of my situation. I had enough savings to last perhaps 2 months at the motel. After that, I'd need income and more permanent housing. I couldn't touch my retirement account without significant penalties for another 7 months when I'd turned 66. I needed a job. I spent the day walking around the commercial district near the motel, inquiring at every business that might need help. Most took one look at my gray hair and found polite ways to decline. By afternoon, discouragement weighed heavily on me. As I passed a small storefront with a sign reading Harrison's Hardware and Home Goods, a display of handcrafted birdhouses caught my eye. They were beautiful, but showed some structural flaws that my engineer's eye couldn't miss. Inside, a bell jingled cheerfully. The shop was crowded with inventory from traditional hardware to homemade crafts. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I noticed your birdhouses," I began. "They're beautiful, but if you adjusted the roof angle and reinforced the base, they'd last twice as long in the elements." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that so, and you know this how?" "Civil engineer," I explained. "Retired now, but I spent 40 years building things that needed to stand up to weather." She studied me thoughtfully. I'm Eleanor Harrison. This is my shop. James Whelan. I extended my hand. Pleasure to meet you. You looking for birdhouse design work, James? There was humor in her voice. Actually, I'm looking for any kind of work, I admitted. I'm in a bit of a transitional period. Eleanor tilted her head. As it happens, I lost my part-time help last week. College kid went back to school. I need someone who knows hardware and can help customers. Maybe do some light woodworking for the craft section. Interested? The offer seemed providential. Very interested, I said, unable to keep the relief from my voice. Pay's not great, she warned. $15 an hour, 20 hours a week to start. That would be perfect, I assured her. When can I start? How about right now? Those birdhouses won't fix themselves. By the end of the day, I'd redesigned and repaired a dozen birdhouses, helped 3 customers find exactly the right screws for their projects, and learned the basics of the register system. For the first time in months, I felt competent, respected, and genuinely useful. As I was locking up with Eleanor, a silver-haired woman approached the store. "Are you closed already, Ellie?" she called. "I need that special light bulb for my reading lamp." "For you, Grace, we'll make an exception." Eleanor smiled, unlocking the door. "Come in, and meet James, my new assistant." Grace turned out to be Eleanor's neighbor from the apartment building next door. As Eleanor helped her find the right bulb, Grace chatted with me. "So new to town?" she asked. "Sort of," I hedged. "I've been living with my daughter's family, but that didn't work out." Grace nodded sagely. "Family can be complicated. Where are you staying now?" "The Parkview, temporarily." "Temporarily indeed," Eleanor interjected, returning with Grace's light bulb. "That place charges tourist rates. You need a real apartment." "I'm working on it," I assured her. "Just need to build up a bit more savings first." Eleanor and Grace exchanged glances. "There's a vacancy in our building," Grace said. "1 bedroom, 2nd floor. Nothing fancy, but the rent's reasonable and the landlord's decent." "And it's walking distance to work," Eleanor added. The unexpected kindness from these strangers brought a lump to my throat. "That sounds wonderful, but I'm not sure I can afford it yet." "Let's talk to Harold, the landlord," Eleanor suggested. "Maybe you could do some maintenance work around the building to offset part of the rent. He's always complaining about repair costs." Within a week, I had moved from the Parkview into a small but clean apartment in Eleanor and Grace's building. The arrangement with Harold worked perfectly. My rent was reduced in exchange for handling minor repairs for the other tenants. Between that and my work at the hardware store, I could just about make ends meet. My apartment came furnished with the basics. A sofa bed that was surprisingly comfortable. A kitchen table with 2 chairs. A dresser and nightstand that had seen better days but were still solid. I hung Margaret's photograph on the wall where I could see it from anywhere in the main room. "It's not much, Maggie," I told her image. "But it's mine. No one can take it away." As I settled into my new life, I found unexpected joys. The simplicity of making my own schedule. The satisfaction of honest work. The pleasure of new friendships with Eleanor, Grace, and the other residents of our building. One evening, about a week after I'd moved out, my phone rang. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. My heart raced as I answered. "Dad." Her voice sounded strained. "Are you okay? Where are you staying?" "I'm fine," I assured her, surprised by her concern after the coldness of our parting. "I found an apartment and a job." "A job?" She sounded genuinely shocked. "Dad, you're 65. You shouldn't be working." "I enjoy it," I said simply. "It gives me purpose." There was a long pause. "Noah misses you," she finally said. "He's been asking when you're coming back." The mention of my grandson sent a pang through my chest. "I miss him too, very much." Scott thinks, she began, then stopped. Scott and I think it would be good if you came back. Noah's been so upset, and the house is falling apart without you. The real reason for the call became clear. It wasn't concern for me. It wasn't even primarily about Noah's feelings. They needed their handyman back. I'm sorry, Amanda, but I can't come back, I said gently. I've started building a new life here. But what about Noah? She pressed. Don't you care about seeing him? Of course I do. I'd love to have him visit me or meet him at the park like we used to when he was younger. That's not the same, she protested. He needs you in his life every day. I agree, I said, but not as the household servant. I deserve better than that, Amanda. I thought you of all people would understand that. Another long pause. I need to go, she said finally. We'll talk about Noah's visitation another time. After she hung up, I sat looking at the phone for a long time. The call had been difficult, but also affirming. I had made the right decision in leaving. I just hoped it wouldn't cost me my relationship with Noah. The following Saturday, true to my suggestion, I met Noah at the park halfway between our homes. Amanda dropped him off but stayed in the car, waving briefly before driving away. Noah ran to me, throwing his arms around my waist. Grandpa, I missed you so much. For the next 2 hours, we played catch, fed the ducks, and talked about his school projects. He seemed lighter somehow, away from the pressure cooker atmosphere of his home. Mom and Dad fight a lot now, he confided as we sat eating ice cream. Dad says it's your fault for leaving, but Mom says it's his fault for being so bossy. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults have problems that have nothing to do with anyone else. Not with you and not with me. Your parents love you very much, and that's what matters most. Dad says you abandoned us, Noah said, eyes downcast. But I told him that's not true. You didn't want to leave. He made you leave. It's complicated, buddy, I sighed. But I promise I'll never abandon you. We can meet like this every week if your parents allow it. Promise, he asked, holding out his pinky. Promise, I said, completing the solemn pinky swear. As we said goodbye, Noah pulled something from his pocket. It was a folded piece of paper. This is from Mom, he whispered. She said not to tell Dad. I unfolded it after Noah left. It was a short note in Amanda's precise handwriting. Dad, I'm sorry things ended this way. You deserved better. Scott is having problems at work. There are rumors of an ethics investigation. I don't know what to believe anymore. Amanda. The note left me unsettled. Despite everything, I couldn't help worrying about my daughter. What kind of trouble was Scott in? Cool. How would it affect her and Noah? That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Eleanor knocked on my door holding a casserole dish. Thought you might like some company for dinner, she said. Grace made her famous lasagna. Over dinner, I found myself telling Eleanor the whole story. My life with Margaret. Amanda's education and marriage. The 6 months of gradual degradation in their home. The ultimatum and my departure. You did the right thing, Eleanor said firmly when I'd finished. No one should accept being treated that way, especially by family. I keep wondering if I could have handled it differently, I admitted. Found some middle ground. Eleanor shook her head. From what you've described, they didn't want a family member. They wanted free labor. You can't compromise with people who don't respect you. Her words echoed what Margaret would have said, and I felt a wave of gratitude for this straightforward woman who'd entered my life at exactly the right moment. What about you? I asked, realizing I knew almost nothing about my new friend. Have you always run the hardware store? No, she laughed. I was a high school science teacher for 30 years. The store belonged to my husband, Harry. When he died 8 years ago, I took it over rather than selling. Best decision I ever made. As the evening progressed, I found myself enjoying Eleanor's company more than I had anyone's since Margaret. She was practical, intelligent, and refreshingly direct. When she left, the apartment felt emptier than before. The following week, I received a call from Bill, my old friend from the engineering firm. "James, I just heard something you should know about. Scott Reynolds is under investigation for insurance fraud. Apparently, he's been performing unnecessary procedures and billing insurance companies for treatments he never provided." The news explained Amanda's cryptic note. "How did you hear about this?" I asked. "My daughter works at the hospital administration office. It's all anyone's talking about. They're saying his practice could be shut down, and he might even face criminal charges." After hanging up, I sat with the information, uncertain what to do. Should I reach out to Amanda, or would that be intruding where I wasn't wanted? In the end, I decided to wait. Amanda knew where to find me if she needed help. Inserting myself into her crisis might only make things worse. But I kept my phone close, just in case. As the days passed, I settled deeper into my new routines. Work at the hardware store. Maintenance jobs around the apartment building. Saturday afternoons with Noah. Occasional dinners with Eleanor, whose company I found increasingly essential to my happiness. One evening, about 2 months after I'd left Amanda's home, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Amanda standing there alone, looking exhausted and years older than when I'd last seen her. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking, "I need to talk to you." I stood in the doorway, momentarily frozen by the sight of my daughter's distressed face. She looked worn down, with dark circles under her eyes, and a pallor I recognized from her medical school days during final exams. "Come in," I finally said, stepping aside. "Would you like some tea?" Amanda nodded, moving past me into the small apartment. I watched her take in my modest living space, her eyes lingering on the few personal items I'd managed to save from my previous life. Margaret's photograph on the wall. The grandfather clock we'd bought on our anniversary, now the most valuable thing I owned. The quilt draped over the sofa bed. "It's nice," she said, sounding surprised. "Cozy." I busied myself making tea, giving us both a moment to adjust to this unexpected reunion. When I returned with 2 steaming mugs, Amanda was standing by the window, looking out at the small courtyard where tenants gathered on pleasant evenings. "How did you find me?" I asked, setting her tea on the coffee table. "Noah," she admitted. "He drew a map of where you meet at the park, and I followed the direction you always walk afterwards." She turned to face me. "I wasn't trying to spy. I just needed to know you were okay." I gestured for her to sit. "I'm better than okay, Amanda. I've built a life here." She perched on the edge of the sofa, hands wrapped around her mug, as if seeking warmth despite the mild evening. "You're really working at a hardware store?" "Harrison's Hardware and Home Goods," I confirmed. "I help customers do repairs, build some of the wooden crafts we sell. Eleanor, the owner, has been very good to me." Amanda's face crumpled suddenly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." I sat beside her, not touching, but close enough to offer comfort if she wanted it. "What's happening?" "Amanda, is this about Scott's troubles at work?" She looked up, surprised. "You know about that?" "I heard rumors," I said carefully. "Something about an ethics investigation." Amanda laughed bitterly. "Ethics investigation. That's putting it mildly." She took a deep breath. "Scott's been performing unnecessary procedures and falsifying insurance claims for years. The hospital board found out when a patient complained about being billed for a procedure she never received." "Oh, Amanda," I sighed. "I'm so sorry." "He lied to me," she continued, anger seeping into her voice. All this time I thought we had this perfect life because we both worked hard. But he was cutting corners, endangering patients, breaking the law. Her voice broke. I built my life with someone I don't even know. I waited, letting her gather her thoughts. After you left, things fell apart at home, she continued. Noah was angry with us. Scott was stressed about the investigation. I was working double shifts to cover our expenses because the hospital suspended Scott's privileges. And the perfect house became a perfect prison, I suggested gently. She nodded. I started seeing everything differently. The way Scott spoke to the remaining household staff. The way he dismissed my concerns. The way he blamed everyone else for his problems. She looked directly at me for the first time. The way he treated you. Amanda. No, please let me finish. She set down her mug with shaking hands. I watched him treating our housekeeper the same way he treated you, and suddenly I remembered being a little girl watching you and Mom work so hard, but still treat everyone with respect. I remembered the lessons you taught me about dignity and kindness. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, and I realized I'd forgotten everything that mattered. The confession hung in the air between us. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be all right, but that would be a disservice to this moment of painful truth. What are you going to do now? I asked instead. I've moved out, she said. Noah and I are staying in a condo owned by the hospital for now. I've filed for legal separation, and I'm cooperating with the investigation into Scott's practice. That took courage, I acknowledged. I learned that from you, she said quietly. Walking away when staying would cost too much of yourself. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past few months settling between us like an invisible presence. I don't expect you to forgive me, Amanda finally said. I treated you terribly. I let Scott treat you even worse. I forgot who I was, who you raised me to be. I forgave you the day I left, I told her truthfully. I was hurt and disappointed, but I never stopped loving you, Amanda. She broke down, then sobbing in earnest, and I gathered her into my arms, as I had when she was small. Her tears soaked through my shirt as I held her, rocking slightly, as if she were still the child who'd scraped her knee or lost a favorite toy. I miss Mom, she whispered. She would have never let things get so bad. Your mother was wiser than both of us, I agreed. But she'd be proud of you for finding your way back to yourself. Eventually, Amanda's tears subsided. She pulled away, wiping her face with embarrassment. I'm sorry for falling apart on you. That's what fathers are for, I said simply. Dad. She hesitated. Would you be willing to see Noah more often? He misses you terribly, and with everything that's happening with Scott, he needs stability. I'd love that, I assured her. My door is always open to both of you. As Amanda prepared to leave, she paused at the door. I don't suppose. Would you consider moving back in with us? The condo has an extra bedroom, and it would mean so much to Noah. The invitation was tempting. To be close to my family again, to help Amanda through this difficult time, to see Noah every day. But I looked around at the small apartment. I'd made my own thought of my job at the hardware store, of Eleanor, and our budding friendship, of the independence I'd reclaimed. I appreciate the offer, I said gently. But I think it's better if I maintain my own space for now. We can visit, often have dinners together, but you and Noah need time to adjust to your new situation without adding another change. Amanda nodded, disappointment visible but understanding too. You're right. We all need some stability right now. She hugged me tightly. Thank you for seeing me, for listening. Always, I promised. After she left, I called Eleanor. My daughter just visited, I told her. I think we might be on the road to reconciliation." "That's wonderful, James," she said warmly. "Want to come over and tell me about it? Grace made apple crisp." "I'll be right there," I agreed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Over the next few weeks, a new pattern emerged. Noah came to stay with me every other weekend. Amanda and I had dinner together once a week, slowly rebuilding our relationship. Conversation by conversation. I introduced them both to Eleanor, who took an immediate liking to Noah and showed him how to use the tools in the hardware store's workshop. One Sunday afternoon, we all gathered in my apartment for a family meal. I cooked Margaret's famous pot roast from her handwritten recipe card that I'd kept safe all these years. Noah set the table. Amanda brought dessert. Eleanor came bearing a bottle of wine and her warm presence. As we sat around my small table sharing food and stories, I looked at these faces that had become my world. Amanda finding her strength again. Noah resilient and kind despite the turmoil in his young life. Eleanor, whose friendship had been an unexpected gift in my time of need. "I have an announcement," I said as we finished dessert. "I've decided to start a small scholarship fund for engineering students at the community college. Nothing fancy, just enough to help someone who might not otherwise have the chance." "Dad, that's wonderful," Amanda smiled. "But can you afford it?" "It's not much," I admitted. "Just a portion of what I saved from selling the house. But it feels right to give someone else a chance the way your mother and I tried to give you one." "What will you call it?" Noah asked. "The Margaret Whelan Memorial Scholarship," I answered. "For students who demonstrate not just academic ability, but kindness and integrity as well." Eleanor raised her glass. "To Margaret," she toasted, "who helped shape a family of remarkable strength and character." Later that evening, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in my apartment. The dishes were washed, the leftovers stored away, but the warmth of the gathering lingered. I picked up Margaret's photograph from the side table where I'd moved it during dinner. "We did good, Maggie," I told her smiling face. "It wasn't always easy, and we took some wrong turns along the way, but in the end, I think we raised a daughter who knows how to find her way back to what matters." I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain of losing Margaret, the hope of moving in with Amanda, the gradual erosion of my dignity in that beautiful house, the moment of decision when I chose self-respect over security, the unexpected joys of my new life. Some might see my story as one of loss. A widower forced from his daughter's home, starting over in his 60s, with nothing but 2 suitcases and fading memories. But I saw it differently. I had lost things, yes, but I had gained something far more valuable. I had reclaimed myself. The small apartment around me wasn't grand like Amanda's house, but every corner of it was mine, earned through my own efforts. The friendships I'd formed weren't based on obligation or blood ties, but on genuine connection and mutual respect. The relationship I was rebuilding with Amanda had a foundation of honesty that had been missing before. As I prepared for bed, I thought about what I would tell Noah the next time he asked about the compass I'd given him. I would say that sometimes finding your true direction means walking away from what feels safe. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand firm in your own worth, even when those who should value you most have forgotten how. And sometimes the miracle isn't in running toward something new, but in standing still, rooted in the dignity that a lifetime has taught you to preserve. Life had taught me that lesson late, but perhaps just in time to help Amanda learn it a little earlier, and Noah earlier still. That I decided as I drifted toward sleep was a legacy worth leaving. If you've watched this far into my story, I'd love to know. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace with family and keeping your dignity? What did you choose, and looking back, was it the right decision? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more journeys of finding strength in unexpected places. Thank you for listening. And remember that sometimes the greatest act of love you can show yourself is knowing when to walk away with your head held high.